Section 11.2 is where you're going to find the surface areas of prisms and cylinders. So a prism is a polyhedron that has two congruent parallel faces, and those are always called the bases. All of the other faces are called lateral faces because they're on the sides. You can name a prism using the shape of its base. So like this one would be called a pentagonal prism because of the bases are pentagons. This one's a triangular prism because those bases are triangles. So here's our formulas. The lateral area of a right prism is the product of the perimeter of the base and the height of the prism. Now lateral area is where you're just finding the area of all of the sides. So these faces that you see on the sides, that's what lateral means. You'd be finding the area of that. Surface area is where you're going to add the lateral area plus 2 of the bases. So we are just going to be focusing on surface area because that does entail us finding the lateral area as well. So here's my first problem. I have a triangular prism that I need to find the surface area of. So just to remind you, here's my formula. I'm going to do the lateral area plus 2 times the area of the bases. The lateral area, remember we said, was PH. P standing for perimeter, H standing for the height of the prism. So I'm going to start looking to see what I have. Well, the perimeter of my base would be 3 plus 4, but I don't know this side. So since I have 2 of the 3 sides, I would want to use Pythagorean theorem in order to find that third side. So that's what I did over here. I did 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. I added these two together. I did the square root, so I found that my third side was 5. So now I can find the perimeter of the base by adding those 3 together, and that's how I got 12. Then the height is the height of the prism. So here I would have 6, the height of the prism. My area of my base depends on what shape it is. So this connects to that last chapter. So my shape is a triangle. So I want to do a half times base times height. So my base is 3 because it's a right triangle. I used 4 as my height. So remember, as a right triangle, it's always both legs. So now I'm ready to plug everything into my formula. So I did perimeter times height of the prism plus 2 times area of the base. So then I just did some multiplication and then added those two and got 84 centimeters squared. So these problems aren't quite as just plugging the numbers in. You do have to do a little bit of figuring to find the perimeter and to find the area of the base. Okay, let's see if you can do the second one here. So on the got it question, it first asked you what's the lateral area of the prism at the right. So the lateral area, remember, is just perimeter of the base times height. Well, this is a regular hexagon, so all of these sides are 6, so I can just add them all up. So my perimeter would be 36, and then the height of the prism is 12, so I just multiplied 36 and 12 and got 432. Then it wants the area of the base in simplest radical form. I am okay with you leaving it in decimal because we didn't put our answers in simplest radical form every time. So my base is a regular polygon. So remember, that formula is a half times apothem times perimeter. So I would have to do a half times, I would have to find my apothem. So this is where I drew in my triangle, found my angle by doing 360 divided by 6. I found my big angle was 60, so then I split that in half and found this is 30. And then I found, oh yeah, my apothem's going to split this side length in half, so I know that this is 3, and then I need to find this. So using my 30, 60, 90 formulas, I had short leg and long leg, so I used long leg equaling square root of 3 times short leg. So I knew that my long leg was 3 square root of 3, which in other words is my apothem. So finding the area of the base, going back, I'd have to do half times apothem times perimeter. I know each side is 6, so I just added those up 6 times and got 36. If I left my answer in simplest radical form, it would be 54 square roots of 3. If you changed it to a decimal, which is perfectly fine, you would have 93.5 meters squared. So the thing that you need to notice is that we are connecting to that last chapter where you had all of those area formulas of those polygons. So then the last question wants you to find the surface area rounded to the nearest whole number. So this is where you just put the two pieces together. So perimeter times height, we already found that was 432. And then I'm going to take 2 times the area of my basis. So 2 times the 93.5, and then do that multiplication in addition, and I got 619. Okay, so then the other part of this lesson is where you're going to be finding the surface area of a cylinder, which is not as complicated as what it is for a prism. So for a cylinder, first off, a cylinder is a solid that has two congruent parallel bases that are circles. So the bases are your circles, which is what makes it a cylinder. The altitude of a cylinder is perpendicular, is a perpendicular segment that joins the plane. So this would be the altitude here. The height of the cylinder is the length of that altitude. So you'll always want to make sure that you know what the height is. It's a perpendicular segment joining those bases. So here's my formulas. Lateral area again is the product of the circumference of the base times the height of the cylinder. So lateral area would just be this side piece that you see here. Surface area would be all of it. So I would want to add my lateral area plus 2 times the area of the bases. Notice this is the exact same formula as what we used for a prism, but now it's different only because of that I'm using the circle, so my formulas inside of it change. So if you want, you could just use this piece here because this would be the circumference formula and then the area formula for a circle. So look at problem number 3. How do we use this formula? It says the radius of the base of a cylinder is 4 inches and its height is 6. What's the surface area in terms of pi? So here was my formula. I went ahead and plugged in what it said to do. So my circumference times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. So now I'm going to plug in what I know. I'm going to do 2 times pi times my radius, which is 4, times the height, which they told me is 6, plus 2 times pi times radius squared. So notice these are pretty straightforward in terms of they usually give you everything. And then it wants me to leave my answer in terms of pi. And we are going to do that on this particular one just to make sure you have practice in doing it. So if I leave it in terms of pi, that means I'm going to multiply all of my whole numbers and leave pi like an x, if you will. So it won't get times with these whole numbers. So I will multiply 2, 4, and 6 and get 48 and leave pi on there like if it was a variable. And then I'm going to multiply 2 and 4 squared and get 32 and leave pi on there like a variable. And then again, since I'm looking at this in terms of variables, these are like terms, so I can just go ahead and add the whole numbers. So when I add 48 and 32, I would get 80 and leave pi on there like a variable, and then I can put in my label. So again, cylinder is not too bad because you can just put it in, but make sure that you're writing your answer in terms of pi. See if you can do the got it question. So in the got it question, here's your formula. You should be putting in 2 times pi times 10 times 9, and then 2 times pi times 10 squared. So multiply your like terms on the first one, you should get 180 pi. Multiply on the second one, you should be getting 200 pi. And then you're going to add those whole numbers together and put pi at the end. So 380 pi, and then centimeters squared. So surface area of prisms and cylinders have the same formula, but the area formulas inside of it will change just because of the bases will change between a prism and a cylinder.